Hello everyone, this is Viju from India. I'm a research scholar at the Indian Institute of Technology Madras in Chennai. It's a great pleasure to be a part of the Critical Costume Project and the Costume Agency 2020 conference. The paper which I present here is a part of my current research in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Madras. I work on a topic titled Ethnicity and Costumes in Contemporary Malayalam Films of Kerala. The title of the paper is Thattam and the Hijab, Intersections of the Local and the Transnational in Muslim Women's Identities as Shown in Contemporary Malayalam Films. Hijab, as you know, is a fashionable attire among young Muslim women around the world and is also an expression of global Islamic culture. Thattam is a traditional headscarf specific to Muslims in Kerala, which is also an expression of faith and belongingness to Islam. Before I enter into the main part of the presentation, I would like to give a brief idea about the Malayalam movie industry and the region of Kerala from where these films are being produced and appreciated. Some of you may know that the Indian film industry is a cluster of regional language industries in which the Hindi language driven Bollywood is a dominant player. According to the Media and Entertainment Report 2020 by FICCI, the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industries, India has produced 1,833 films in the year 2019-20. Among these, 1,460 films, or 80% of all films produced, were from regional languages. And half of these regional language films are made in the South Indian languages such as Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, and Malayalam. That will be around 900 films. The Malayalam film industry of the state of Kerala contributes an average of 200 films per year, which is around 9 to 11% of the total films produced. Demographically, Kerala's population is 28% of Muslims and 18% of Christians and 54% of Hindus, a demographic that is slightly different from that of Indian average. Politically, the Left Democratic Front (LDF), dominated by the Communist Party of India Marxist, or the United Democratic Front (UDF), led by the Indian National Congress, forms governments in the state with alternating tenures. Back to the main topic, I take two Malayalam films, one Thattam Marayathu, literally in the shadow of the veil, released in 2012, and KL10 Pattu, released in 2015. The name KL10, according to the Kerala Automobile Registration System, represents the number code for a Malabar district called Malappuram. I mainly look at two characters from these films. The first, Aisha, a college student who is the heroine of the movie Thattam Marayathu. She covers her head and neck with the Thattam, which is a traditional and local version of a headscarf, maybe of polyester or silken material, normally draped in a relaxed manner. Muslim girls in Kerala wear a Thattam while going out from their homes. The Malayalam language word Thattam also appears in poems and in lyrics of the songs as an expression for beauty or allure of Muslim women. The second character is Shadia, the leading female character in the movie KL10. She's draped in a variety of hijabs. She's also an architect by profession in the film, a working woman. Though both women are very contemporary, they differ each other in different aspects of their figurations. The objective of this paper is to look at the different elements that take part in the formation of visible identities of Muslim women characters, specifically focusing on the costumes they wore in these films. To analyze these characters, I borrow Joan and Wissel's notion of the dress as a situated bodily practice, which she elaborates in her work, The Fashion Body. As you know, the characters in a movie go through different situations, and each situation provides us with a lot of details about those characters and about the spaces they live in. Here, I take some clips and snapshots from these films and try to make meaning from them by situating these images in the specific cinematic context and broader social context of Kerala. Also, I will look at the intersectionality of identity with politics, religion, gender, and fashion in films. The movie Thattam Marayathu uses Thattam as an aesthetic tool. It is evident even from the title itself. The main character in the movie, Aisha, is introduced in the words of her lover Vinod, a young Hindu Nair boy and a loyalist of the Communist Party who stay at the police custody.
തട്ടം നിനക്കൊരു വീക്ക്നെസ് അല്ലേ?
ഓള തട്ടോട്ട് കഴിഞ്ഞ എൻ്റെ സാറേ, പിന്നെ ചുറ്റുള്ളതൊന്നും കാണാൻ പറ്റൂല. ആ തട്ടത്തിനകത്തുള്ള മുഖം മാത്രം.
He describes her attractiveness to a police officer while narrating how he ended up in that custody. His description goes like this: when she comes as raped in that veil, oh sir, I cannot see anything around except her face. For Vinod, Aisha's veiled body is a site of his sexual desire, which can also be read as a cloth fetish. Join Envisel cites David Consul's definition of fetishism as the individual's displacement of private erotic feelings onto a non-genital part of the body or onto a particular article of clothing by association with a part of the body or onto a particular article of clothing in conjunction with its effect on the body. Entwistle further clarifies that a fetish can be a part of the body or an article of clothing and sometimes a combination of both. Thattam in this movie acts as a fetish and is reified through slow motions and song sequences. Fetish objects have a critical role in the construction of the other self, here a Muslim woman self. The Muslim woman self of Aisha is imagined from the perspective of a Hindu young male affiliated to the Communist Party. Aisha is shown here in a white semi-transparent tattam and salwar kameez accompanied by Sanskrit songlines in the background suggesting the figure of a Hindu goddess. In Indian context, the whiteness and semi-transparency of the material signifies the purity of that object. While we know this intensely longing for Aisha, he also keeps a distance from her by putting her in the notions of purity and chastity. Most of the time, the objects or materials of religious observance have an association with purity and sacredness. And the concept of fetish, the objects with magical power, is a part of the study of religious culture in anthropology. Here, I must also indicate something about the Communist Party's relationship with the Muslim community, specifically in the Kerala context. Abdullah Anjulat and Dinesh Vadakanil, in their work on Islam and Kerala, observed that though there are many similarities and common grounds between the Communist Party and the traditional Muslims, the Muslims are hesitant to fall in the fold of the Communist Party. Secular political parties always have a dilemma in accommodating the religious symbols or ideologies in their public platforms. Meanwhile, most of the organizations form strategies to attract their votes. Often we can see political parties used to deploy visible religious symbols in their public campaigns and demonstrations to evoke a feeling of belongingness towards their organizations. I can cite one such popular image where a young girl clad in niqab and holding a red flag appeared in a local rally of SFI, the Students' Federation of India, a wing of CPIM. What I am trying to demonstrate is that even a man's desire for a woman's veiled body or for a fetish costume can yield different meanings in a particular context. Later in the movie, Vinod opens a parda shop in his locality as an attempt to find a livelihood and earn money before his marriage. The fetish garment now is a commodity. Parda shops, the outlets specifically dedicated to Islamic women's dress, are now a common sight in the cities and towns of Kerala, particularly in the Malabar region, where the Muslim population is comparatively higher. Anthropologists Caroline and Filippo Osella have remarked that the new dress styles or fashion in Kerala is heavily influenced by movies. They supplement their assumptions with testimonials from shopkeepers engaged in the sale of Islamic clothing. They observe that the expansion of parda and its modern fashionable version called abaya is largely a phenomenon that began in the 1990s. The rise of Hindutva politics and the fear and insecurity felt among the Muslims at the wake of demolition of the Babri Masjid Mosque in Ayodhya in the north Indian state of Uttar Pradesh and the communal conflict that followed it led them to adopt religious markers as an assertion of collective identity. Osalas cite two main currents behind the usage of parda among Muslims in the Kerala context: a growing sense of marginalization and insecurity as a minority community, and a heightened sense of what is right and moral prompted by social reform movements such as Kerala Nadwatul Mujahideen. Abdullah and the nation attribute that the recent trend of wearing religious outfits in the colleges and university campuses did not exist till the end of the 20th century. It got leverage as a part of the Salafi project, which emphasized the idea of pure Islam and the desire to create a modest Muslim women's self. Further brands like Hoodlin, Persania, and Pervin are also became popular after this period. Now let's move to the next snap. Aisha invites Vinod to her campus to convey her willingness to live together despite the opposition of her parents. She appears in the scene wearing a black parda. Two factors are noticeable here. Aisha wears a black parda to engage in a public space such as college. The dress also expresses her decisiveness and boldness. Aisha's next appearance in a black parda is in a scene where she adventurously arrives at the inaugural function of Vinod's Parda shop. Black parda here is an attire that shows the firmness and determination of a woman and also a new subjectivity. It is apparent from these images that an agency emerges among Muslim women when they wear clothes of religious observance, which shows the attainment of a certain amount of social mobility and self confidence. In other words, wearing pious clothing acts as a strategy to attain social mobility and participation in the public space. I should also mention the increased participation of Muslim women in the higher education institutes in India, particularly after the implementation of the Sachar Committee 2006 recommendations, which ensured reservation for Muslims in higher education institutes. This has also enhanced Muslim women's education in the country. Moving to the next movie, KL10 Pattu, it is interesting to notice that there are no women clad in black pardas. Some women in the movie wear color parda, a phenomenon seen after the 1990s. In the early Malayalam films, black parda was used to represent a kind of patriarchal repression and or conservatism of Muslim community. Examples include movies like Padam Onnu Viru Vilapam, Perumalakalam, Classmates, etc. In these films, women characters are either the subjects of repression or conservatism. Kailton instead introduces the leading female character Shadia as attired in fashionable hijabs. The movie avoids stereotypical depictions of Muslim women like as clad in black pardas, and it also challenges the secular mainstream understandings of Islamic subjectivity. The film KL10 has many portrayals that contrast with those in Thattam in terms of perspectives and politics. KL10 begins with the title that reads Thank God. When the credit titles end, the camera settles to the minaret of a mosque and a character named Jin enters the scene and narrates the story. The central narrative element of the movie is the escape of Ahmad and Shadia from their homes to register their marriage as per the Special Marriage Act, which is a way of marrying confidentially without the consent of their parents. Ahmad is a student in a religious college and Shadia a working woman. Also, we see Shadia enjoys some superiority over Ahmad. Shadia is introduced in the film as she wraps her hijab. One of the major attractions in the costumes of the film is the heroine's fashionable hijabs and a wide range of apparels that showcase the diversity of global Islamic culture. Rena Lewis pointed out that hijab was one of the potent symbols of Islamic revivalism and the right to wear movements. Hijabists believe that the garment can evoke transnational belongingness among Muslims all around the world. Through the focus on appearance and corporeality, young girls interpret religion differently, departing from the traditional way of interpretations. The popularity of the hijab and modern Islamic fashion inform the emergence of women's movement within the religion. Simultaneously, there has been skepticism and criticism on new Islamic figurations from both secular political parties and within the Islamic fold of traditionalism. Traditionalists accuse that the modern reformists are trying to erase indigenous cultures of Islam specific to a region by promoting a homogeneous global style. In Kelton, there is an instance that exemplifies and addresses such criticism. In an attempt to register their marriage legally, Ahmad and Shadia travel to Kannur, a place known for the communist dominance. I should also mention that Kannur was the backdrop of Tattatin Marayathu, which we discussed earlier. When Ahmad and Shadia reach Kannur, a friend introduces the bride to Ahmad's communist friends there. One of the communist comrades inquires whether her name is Aisha, a reference to the character in Thattam and remarks, "That is how it is supposed to be." Further, an aide of the comrade makes a satirical comment on Shadia's hijab that they may not promote wearing such conservative attire that can incite communal feelings. Through such remarks that arise from the mainstream perception of Islamic dress, the movie KL10 criticizes the dominant secular and stereotypical presumptions. The intra-religious debate regarding the parda and hijab pushes the traditional Sunni sect to one side and the reformist Salafi sect to other side. Traditional Sunni scholars consider that the popularization of strict dress codes such as the black parda and the hijab for women is a part of imposing Arabian Islamism influenced by Saudi Arabia. I'm not going to elaborate the hijab discussion here. There has been a bunch of academic works, particularly in the last 2 decades, regarding hijab wearers and Islamic fashion, from scholars like Fadwa El-Kindi, Emma Tarlow, Rena Lewis, and Elizabeth Bukhar. According to them, the pious young practitioners of Islamic dress interpret the relevance of religious clothes in political terms, such as choice and right to wear, along with its Islamic grounds. This politics also can be viewed as a response to the unregulated, Western dominated global fashion system. Islamic fashion introduces ideas of modesty, piety, and ethical consumption to the globalized market. Scholars like Rena Lewis and Emma Tarlow find the discourse of fashion and the growing interest in it among students and young women are indications of the emergence of an affluent class, which may ultimately result in the formation of class hierarchy and distinction, which also contradict with the Islamic notion of egalitarianism. Material practices such as fashion focus on the externality of the religion rather than the religious adherence to the qualities like inner faith, submissiveness, and spiritual achievements, can be considered as a deviance from conventional notions of religiosity. So, Islamic fashion advocated by young women has the potential to conflict with the conventional religious system characterized by the patriarchal, privileged, priestly class. I conclude by summarizing the arguments that I attempted to put forward in this presentation. Firstly, film costumes are a potential source of information regarding the formation of subjectivities and ethnic identities in Indian society. Secondly, this analysis of Muslim women's costumes from 2 contemporary Malayalam films tells us about a recent shift that has occurred in the perception and the reception of Islamic clothes. And it also provides us with an insight into the factors that influence the formation of Muslim women's subjectivity and identity. Thirdly, the debates on religious identities often tend to focus on the domain of scriptures and prescriptions without considering external factors that shape dress practices and its visibility in public spaces. The two films which I discussed here point to external factors that influence the formation of Muslim women's subjectivity and the practices of Islamic dress. These factors include the relationship of the ethnic group with the mainstream secular political organizations, the spaces that the practitioners of Islamic dress engage in, the internal dialogues among the various groups within the religion, the new arenas of transnational fashion and consumption as a result of globalization, and an upsurge of women's rights movements and the increased participation of Muslim women in the higher education sector. Fourth, the expressions of pious subjectivities of Muslim women in contemporary Malayalam films shows that religious attires have more social and political connotations than being mere expressions of faith and belief in the religion. Interestingly, even when the differences exist regarding the wearing of faith based garments, new Muslim fashion has penetrated and popularized among the students and young Muslim women in Kerala, irrespective of intra religious groupings.